Welcome to Exodus Youth Worx on CYC. I have with me this program Marina Bechet, who is our social worker at Exodus Youth Worx. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, we've been getting together to talk quite often. This program we're going to be concentrating on how Exodus Youth Worx fits into the wider Coptic community, and if we get time we'll go to the wider Australian community. So yesterday you joined me at St Mark's Coptic College at Wattle Grove. Can you tell me what we were doing there?
So we went, myself, you, Abba, our support worker, and Moses, who's a new volunteer who has come on board with us, and we spoke about the spirit of Christmas. So we really wanted to try and enforce how youth can spend their time and actually understand the true meaning of Christmas. So we spoke a lot about service and giving and trying to show them that Christmas isn't about a time for presents and to be selfish.
Can I have my new iPhone,
exactly.
please, Mum and Dad?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is great timing with the new one being released.
Yeah.
So and a lot of these kids were really responsive to that. I know that we had 3 of those students come on board with us and do their community placement with us, and by the end of their placement they said, we are so thankful to actually being exposed to the issues faced by our community. You know, a lot of these kids aren't aware of the issues that are happening within the community to their own peers, to their own youth. So it was a really great time to just be exposed to that, and they left saying, we are so thankful and we want to help. And we also just tried enforcing that to say, okay, but during this time it's a great time for self-reflection and to say, okay, how can I help the person next to me? How can I help my neighbour? How can I help my community? Yeah.
I was rather taken back by the young man. So we had 300 youth in front of us.
A little intimidating.
Yeah, so from year 7 to year 11. And we mentioned do we welcome asylum seekers and refugees? What is our stance as Christians and part of the Coptic community to those coming into Australia? And we mentioned that our Lord Jesus Christ himself was a refugee in Egypt and one without papers. He was not, he didn't have his passport coming into Egypt for that period when he was fleeing Herod. And one young man at the end of the day came and said, you know what, I thought asylum seekers were all sort of, a real burden on us, and I never thought that Christ himself was a refugee. And it was a moment like you could see a light bulb going on in his head or above his head, thinking, I never thought about that before. Christ was a refugee. So the people that we deal with in Exodus, they're youth, they're families, and they can be young people fleeing Egypt under political asylum. And that's always great because they're our people. But this young man thought beyond that and suddenly realized that others come from or flee from places of conflict. And we as Christians, Cops, Australians, do have a responsibility to accommodate some of these people.
Of course, as Christ welcomes everyone with no judgment and with love, we should also be doing that as well. Through our everyday teachings and through our everyday works, we should try and emulate his teachings and try to, I think, through that self-reflection on a daily basis, you always want to try and be a better version of yourself. And that's really important to actually bring people as well.
And I think that's one role that Exodus Youth Worx has fallen into organically, is that we try and live Christ daily, and we all do as Christians. However, we're really forced into that place where we have to forgive, we can't judge, because if we did, the next youth coming in the door won't even be accepted with his issues. We have to say, okay, these are your issues, there must be a reason behind them. Let us unpack and investigate what's going on in that young person's life. And when we speak about it to others, we do feel that sense of, that I get it. That's what Exodus really does do. We get asked, what do we do? But when we speak about it, it does help people understand. And those young people yesterday, and those that came on board from the school for their end of year community service, went back, thank God, through the grace of God, really appreciating service in general, as it should be for all of us, and not just 1 hour on Sunday.
100%, I think.
At Sunday school.
Yeah, definitely. Service shouldn't just be a thing that you tick off and like, okay, I've done it for the week and that's it.
Should be lived.
I've filled my quota, exactly.
Yeah.
It should be lived.
Yeah.
I remember I went to the Coptic school. I had one of my Coptic Orthodox studies periods, and my brother was actually the relief teacher for that period.
Gosh.
Yeah, interesting times. And he actually said something that has stuck with me for my whole entire life. He said, we were in year 11 going on to year 12 at the time, so it was, everyone's trying to figure out what they want to do in life. And he said, the only advice that I can give you is no matter what you do in life, make it your service. You have to find a way to bring people to God through whatever you do in life. Always make it your service. Your life should be your service, and that's how I ended up in social work. It's how I ended up with Exodus. It's, we live daily trying to emulate Christ and his teachings.
It's interesting you bring up your brother, because your brother was one of my students.
Yes.
And I was teaching Coptic Orthodox studies, and I remember for the first and second trip into South Africa for the mission trip with His Grace Bishop Antonius Moros, we had year 9 and year 11 students go with us. And one of those year 9 students became your brother's wife.
Yes.
And then your brother got roped into the service in South Africa and into Exodus later, and then he's roped you in. So that's really good. That was a
nice
good investment.
Family flow-on effect there.
It is. So with Exodus, you've experienced how we're not just an isolated island, we're actually moving out into the community. I thought we'd take a break now. We can go and have a look at some of the photographs that we've put together in a slide so that our viewers can see that Exodus does branch out into other services of the Coptic Orthodox Church. Okay, so there we go. We've got Exodus Youth Worx in the Coptic schools. We've got Exodus Youth Worx in youth meetings, in family matters. We did start a program a couple of years back that has now developed into or moved into the area of family services. So when there is a camp for family services, Exodus does get an invitation in, and we talk about what parents should be aware of with their young people. What else? We did caucus?
Yes, we've got caucus in there. We've got our youth meetings at church. That, I know you've given a fair few talks over the last few years as well.
Recently at St Mark's. So they started a new service that's titled
Lion's Den.
Lion's Den.
I think, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the servants that's heading that service went to South Africa and helped us start Exodus Youth Worx back in 2004 and 5. And now he has not a similar service, but it certainly is in the ethos of what we do at Exodus at St Mark's. Have you been to any of those meetings yet?
I haven't actually, but I was there with you when we spoke up the idea and tried brainstorming. And I think it's a very, very important program that the church has decided to do, because a lot of these youth don't feel comfortable, don't feel welcome. They feel very misplaced within their own community. So it's very important to have a space where they feel comfortable, they feel invited, and they don't feel judged. And I think that that's a very, very important thing for them.
So that Lion's Den service is not held, it's not held in the church, it's in one of the buildings next door. And they're inviting young people that are, they might be slightly, a little bit distant from the church, but not completely gone. But the environment is very friendly. It looks like Exodus, I've been told. There's lounges and activities on the night. So it's with a blessing to us that we have been accepted and welcomed into the parishes to share what's worked, the formula that's worked at Exodus, now being used in the churches. Now you go on a Tuesday night up to Parramatta Food Van.
Yeah, so I alternate between, well, I used to go to Parramatta, now I'm more heading in towards the city. So we take a client who's with us at the moment as well and try to have her do a bit of community outreach, which is really important for our young people to do. So we do that. We alternate between doing Bible studies and caucus each week. And for her, it was a very, very educative experience. You know, she didn't really quite fathom the amount of homelessness within the city. And for her, it was amazing that the Coptic community was having an outreach service for them as well. She was really good in interacting with a lot of these people that were there. She made caramel slices for them, which was really cool, and they
muffins.
Loved
I think
it.
one week.
One week she made muffins. And it was a really great way for her to just interact with the community and to give back. And I think that that's really important. She also left there feeling very grateful for her life.
And let's explore that. So when we say client, this young person lives with us and has some issues. So when we sign them up, when there's an intake appointment for a new client, there is an element of community service that they agree to whilst they're with Exodus Youth Worx. So this particular client is donating their time at Food Van, feeding the homeless and cooking for them. And out of that, she realises that yes, she has her issues, however, they're not as severe as being homeless in the cold in the streets of Sydney. Yeah,
I think that that's something that we always try and enforce with our young people, is saying, okay, you have these things, what are you grateful for? I think a lot of people think that while they're stuck in a situation, it can't get any worse. But in reality, it very well could be. So it's always trying to reinforce that the successes that they have in their life as well.
And that they have the capacity to give as well, even despite where they're at in their life. Everyone can give something.
Yeah.
It also avoids the victim mentality, which can come about if you're a client at a service. We certainly want to avoid that. Okay, so this program, we've covered the the presence of Exodus Youth Worx within the Coptic community, sharing what we've learnt over 14 years, but also being blessed by other services like COCUS, that's the food van.
And I think it's really important as well to actually have that connection with other services within the community as well. You know, it's not enough to just have one service that can do everything on their own, because
we can't.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it's very, very important to have a network of services and working with the church as well, which is very important.
There's a great service that services Exodus where they provide home-cooked meals. We pick up from them, and then that food feeds those people that we know that don't have access to daily food. So everyone, I mean, it's a great example of the body of Christ. Everyone has a specialty, and it's all feeding the people of Christ. And cooperation and understanding what we're all good at. We can't do everything ourselves,
and
as
everyone
you said.
has an important role to play in it as well. You know, everyone has their own gift, everyone has their own time that they can spare, you know, and it's very, very important. So it all comes together in the bigger picture as well. You may think that, you know, the thing that you're doing isn't as important as someone else, but in reality, it very much is.
And that reminds me, we had Abanoob on our program a couple of programs ago. Now he's a young man that's a support worker, staff at Exodus, but came on board as one of our members and clients. And over 5 years of living with us and, you know, shadowing us and being with us when we do our service, he's now going back into, he teaches Sunday school, and I think he's got a year 11 and 12 class, and he's mentoring young people, hopefully with early intervention, so that he can catch them before they drift off too far. So he's learnt that whilst studying youth work, but also being at Exodus Youth Worx. Okay, well that's it. We've discussed a great deal this program. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us at Exodus Youth Worx on CYC, and we'll see you in the next program. Thank you.
Thank you.